Batman Endgame
Attention Span Test.
This is the entire Batman Endgame storyline in a single 20-minute video. A period where Batman was not only forced to go up against a Jokerized Justice League, but a Jokerized Gotham City as well. What if Batman was randomly attacked by the entire Justice League? Well, that's exactly what happened to him after dealing with the Court of Owls and the Joker. Because one day, while joking around with Alfred and analyzing some new equipment with Alfred's daughter Julia, Wonder Woman came smashing in through the window and into Bruce out of nowhere, only to drag him throughout the city just moments later. So Bruce tried asking her why she was doing this, but for some reason she just wouldn't give him an answer. So he forced her to drop him onto some nearby trees at a park by attaching mini sonic devices to the sides of her skull. But it wouldn't keep her at bay for long, and soon enough, upon catching up to him, Diana expressed that the League was there to do something that they've been wanting to do for a long time: kill Bruce Wayne. So without the slightest hesitation, Bruce reached out to Alfred, demanding he activate their Fenrir contingency plan immediately. But what's the Fenrir contingency plan? Well, part of it consisted of dispersing massive amounts of gas all throughout the middle of Gotham, because that would not only result in all of the citizens evacuating that area, but it would also allow Bruce to escape into the sewers to acquire none other than his Justice Buster suit. And because the civilians were evacuated, he could fight with it carelessly without worrying about harming them. And just moments after strapping himself inside, he walked over to Diana, clobbered her across the street into a building, and expressed that she needed to fight against whatever was controlling her. Unfortunately, she showed no signs of letting up on him though, so he stuck her with some sort of magical artifact that temporarily put her out of the fight by making her believe that she actually killed him, also allowing him to sneak away and ask Alfred if he could pick up any of the other League members' signals. But before Alfred could even finish his sentence, a red flash of lightning sped across the Justice Buster suit, tearing off one of the shoulder plates and ripping off the bat symbol. Knowing that this could only be Barry, Bruce began spraying the street with frictionless coating, causing him to crash into a nearby building. But moments later, when Aquaman tried blitzing him with his trident, Bruce knew this battle was far from over. So in an attempt to neutralize him, he began blasting him with magnesium carbonate foam, a foam that would continuously rip moisture out from his body the more he struggled and resisted. After that though, the situation grew 10 times more dangerous than it already was, because none other than Superman came flying in like a speeding bullet, clobbering Bruce so hard that he went flying through multiple buildings until stopping inside Gotham's Royal Theater. But rather than trying to fight back, Bruce elected to see if he could try getting through to Clark, asking him who did this to him. And that's when suddenly the entire Justice League began smiling and laughing in unison, because the reason they were like this was because the Clown Prince of Crime had Jokerized every single one of them. After Batman was confronted by a Jokerized Superman, Superman picked up a giant slab of concrete and slammed it onto Bruce with so much power that it ripped open a giant hole in the floor. Despite his unfavorable odds though, Bruce knew that it was time to fight for his life like never before. So he activated the Justice Buster's Red Giants, brass knuckles embedded with microscopic red suns capable of weakening Superman. And immediately upon doing so, he relentlessly batted Clark in the face so many times that his face actually sunk into the concrete. Knowing Clark was far more than capable of enduring a few good punches though, he continued the rampage by dishing out such a massive uppercut that Clark went flying back to the surface of Gotham. But with a bloody smile on his face and a crazed look in his eye, Clark would then attempt to answer back utilizing his heat vision. Unbeknownst to him though, the Justice Buster was equipped with plasma shields, so his heat vision was useless and easily deflected. But unbothered by Bruce's gimmicks, the Jokerized Man of Steel would then start melting all of the support beams on the nearby buildings, which eventually caused them to collapse directly on top of Bruce. At that point, Bruce knew he was in a losing battle. The Justice Buster was built to take on Superman, a hero who had morals and lines he'd never cross. But with Joker toxin flowing through his veins, he wasn't Superman anymore. Now he was a monster, and soon enough that monster lifted him up in the air, tore him out of his suit piece by piece, and then demanded him to start begging begging for his life. But having too much pride to let the Joker get the best of him, Batman made one last attempt to put Clark out of the fight by chewing on a pellet of kryptonite gum, spitting it directly in his eye, and causing both of them to go plummeting into the ocean. After that, it's revealed that Bruce transferred all the Justice League members to Argus headquarters to be treated with an antitoxin he developed to flush Joker's chemicals out of their bodies. Unfortunately, it was going to take 4 to 5 days for them to fully recover though, which meant that things were going to get real scary. A world without a Justice League was a recipe for disaster, so Bruce knew that Joker had to be planning something big. Later on, Bruce went to Arkham Asylum to see if he could get a lead on what Joker was planning, but upon coming up short, he was approached by an Arkham employee named Eric Border, expressing that he wanted to help. Unbeknownst to Bruce though, Eric Border was never a real person to begin with. He was just the Joker under a false identity, who used makeup to change the color of his skin and muscle relaxants to hide his wretched smile. And right after revealing himself, he locked Bruce inside one of the cells, started filling it with gas that began to paralyze him, and then revealed that he had been secretly Jokerizing the entire city of Gotham right under Bruce's nose. After the Joker revealed that he Jokerized practically all of Gotham, Bruce woke up in his Batcave completely paralyzed and strapped up to some kind of dolly. Despite being in such a horrible situation though, he was eventually able to fight his way back to normal function as the effects of the chemicals Joker used on him slowly faded away. However, moments later, upon looking at a screen displaying the current state of Gotham City, he realized just how bad things really were out there. And as indicated by Alfred and Julia, this new Joker toxin strain was unlike anything they'd ever seen before, because upon putting it up against an antitoxin in a simulation, it completely shrugged off the antitoxin's effects and went back to normal. Refusing to believe there was nothing they could do about it though, Bruce expressed that nothing was unkillable and that over the years he had crafted nearly 100 different cures for the Joker toxin, so one of them had to be effective. But according to Julia, that was the problem. They had literally tested every single one of them and none of them showed any signs of success. Nevertheless, Bruce was persistent that there had to be some kind of way for them to be able to reverse it, indicating that maybe if he found whoever the first patient was, patient 0, they could possibly make a cure out of them because there had to be some sort of initial resistance towards the virus. So he suited up and grabbed one of his gliding attachments, hit the chaotic streets of Gotham City, and began making his way towards the hospital where the first patient was. But on his way there, he was contacted by Jim Gordon, who told him that he needed to be especially careful right now because somehow the virus changed people's emotions. So people that normally loved and appreciated Batman were now gonna hate him with a burning passion. And as hordes upon hordes of Jokerized citizens began flocking to him as he soared through the air, he knew that Jim was telling the truth. Upon making it to the hospital, Batman smashed his way inside through one of the windows, immediately forced to take down a group of civilians who were trying to end his life. No matter what sector in the hospital he was in though, it seemed as if the nightmare was never gonna stop because he was constantly bombarded by either more Jokerized patients or more Jokerized doctors. However, eventually he was able to clear enough space and move around just quick enough to locate patient 0. But as he got closer and closer to the operation table they were laying on, he was met with the terrible realization that patient 0 was none other than Joe Chill, the man who killed his parents. But that wasn't even the worst part, because upon turning to his left, he discovered that the Joker had set up some sort of makeshift theater playing Zorro, because he was planning on recreating the death of his parents with Duke Thomas and his family. The Joker tried forcing Batman to relive his greatest nightmare by making Joe Chill kill Duke Thomas's parents at a makeshift theater. But as Chill slowly raised up his gun and pointed it at all of them, Batman smashed his way into their chamber, jumped in front of the bullet, and saved the family from certain death. But after that, when all the other Jokerized patients and doctors broke in, both of Duke's parents were infected very quickly because this particular Joker toxin strain acted like an airborne virus and was capable of transmitting through laughter. So Bruce quickly grabbed Duke and then started making a break for it. However, in the midst of doing so, he got a call from Commissioner Gordon crying happy tears because he had actually just killed the Joker. Apparently, while Bruce was in the hospital, the Joker broke into Jim's apartment and tried striking him down with an axe. But somewhere down the line, he pulled out his pistol and blasted him with the kill shot, or at least he thought he did, because moments later, despite being shot in the chest, the Joker got back up on his feet, took Jim's phone away from him, and then greeted Bruce with a big, devious smile on his face. So Bruce made his way to Jim's apartment as fast as he could, only to discover him laying up against a wall with an axe in his chest upon his arrival. So he told Duke to go grab the first aid kit in the bathroom so they could start patching him up, but then Jim ripped the axe out of his chest himself and then tried striking down Bruce with it. Thankfully, before he could do so though, Alfred's daughter Julia arrived on the scene, blasting him with 2 tranquilizing darts and rendering him completely harmless. After that, Julia took Duke to the Batcave where they'd be safe, so Bruce could visit a scientist named Paul Decker, who for some reason was wildly obsessed with human regeneration and immortality, which would explain why Joker was able to get back up after taking a bullet point blank to his chest. Overall, Bruce's theory was that he helped Joker create some kind of juice that was making him super strong, and then also created an inverse of that juice that was making the Jokerized civilians super weak and starting to decay. But unfortunately, Decker was no help despite the millions of lives that were in danger, because not only did he try blasting Bruce with a machine gun, but he also claimed he took no part in crafting the substance empowering the Joker, saying that it was actually a chemical called dionysium that people in Gotham discovered a long time ago, like Vandal Savage and Ra's al Ghul. Moments later though, Bruce was contacted by Julia, claiming that the Jokerized citizens had less than 24 hours to live as the toxins slowly ate at their bodies. And so, desperate to obtain answers and somehow create a cure, Batman resorted to something he never thought he'd have to resort to, which was asking for help from none other than the Court of Owls in their very own maze. Batman needed help from none other than the Court of Owls to help take down the Joker and create a cure for Gotham, exclaiming that he knew they were in possession of the regenerative substance dionysium that was making Joker so strong. But according to them, they only had a corrupt version of it that wasn't nearly as pure as what was in Joker's blood. So Batman tried stressing that if they didn't tell him the truth about how Joker obtained this chemical, then the city was gonna die. But none of the court members really cared about Gotham being in shambles, indicating that they were fine with letting the clown burn it to the ground because the city along with them would eventually rise again. Displeased with their response though and wanting to make a statement, Bruce would then hurl an explosive batarang at the model of Gotham they were assembling, causing all of them to flee the scene out of fear he was gonna harm them next. But almost immediately upon doing so, a giant scythe-swinging Talon emerged from the water, slicing him in the arm, jamming a hook into his shoulder, and then whacking him so brutally that he went crashing into a bunch of debris. So in an effort to stay alive, Bruce lifted up one of the broken skyscraper models and jammed the pointy end of it directly into the Talon's arm. To his misfortune though, the Talon was practically unaffected, and soon enough they re-engaged in battle. But we can safely assume that Bruce eventually emerged victorious, because after that the story advances into the future with him slowly walking out of the Gotham sewers while trying to get in contact with Julia. Once she finally responded though, Batman's heart sank to his stomach because she indicated that something had happened to Alfred during his time under the surface. Somehow the Joker managed to get past all of the Batcave's defenses with nothing more than a scratch on his face. Upon getting inside, Alfred tried stopping him by blasting him with a shotgun, but because of the Joker's new healing factor, he not only managed to get away, but hid within the shadows just long enough until finding an opportunity to slice Alfred's hand off. Thankfully, Alfred was still alive though, because he was able to crawl inside the armory and lock himself inside before the Joker could finish the job. Nevertheless, moments later, Batman started hearing music playing all throughout the streets of Gotham, so he pulled out his binoculars to pinpoint where it was coming from, only to realize that the Joker was now throwing a giant parade filled with souvenirs he stole from the Batcave, like the giant penny, the T-Rex animatronic, and the giant Joker card, all in celebration of the death of Gotham. Now, in order to reach him and synthesize a cure out of the dionysium in his spine, Batman was gonna have to do something crazy and something he never thought he'd have to resort to once again. So he rounded up a few members of the Bat family and began breaking down what their strategy was, but then also revealed that they'd be working alongside the remaining villains in his rogues gallery. Batman was forced to work with villains in his rogues gallery to put an end to the Joker's madness once once and for all, which doesn't seem like a good idea, but in this particular situation, it was the perfect solution to the Bat family's lack of manpower, because since the Joker's new virus strain reversed people's emotions, the vast majority of Jokerized citizens wouldn't try fighting back against them, because if they normally hated these villains, now they would be totally in love with them. As them and the Bat family plowed through the Jokerized hordes though, Batman told them that the oxygen masks that they needed to wear to avoid being infected would immediately start releasing knockout gas if they attempted using excessive force, even though he was just lying, in hopes that they could finally just put their differences aside for once for the greater good, because if the Joker actually succeeded in burning Gotham to the ground, it wouldn't only mean that Batman had lost his city, but that they had lost their city as well. However, despite this super rare moment of unison, soon enough the amount of Jokerized civilians was so overwhelming that their progress towards the Joker was put to a halt. So in a desperate attempt to keep them at bay and provide some cover, Poison Ivy built a massive wall of plants around everyone, allowing Bane to launch Bruce so high up into the air that he was able to glide all the way over to Joker's parade float and latch onto the mouth of his T-Rex. Right after that though, he almost lost his grip, because as soon as the Joker was aware of his presence, he pulled out a chainsaw and tried slicing off both of his hands. So Bruce swung himself up on top, got behind the Joker's back, and began choking him out while trying to use a needle to extract the Dionysium from within his spine. However, moments later they would all lose control of the battle and be forced to stop fighting, because the Joker triggered an extremely loud laugh track to be played all over the city at 140 decibels, giving them no choice but to cover their ears, as screeching high-pitched laughter almost ruptured their eardrums. And even when the laugh track eventually came to a stop, their odds of beating the clown only grew slimmer, because he started releasing toxic gas in the air that effectively made each and every one of them start losing consciousness. But wanting to rub his victory in Bruce's face, Joker wrapped his arm around his head, pulled out a little tablet, and then cheerfully expressed that maybe if he knew his city better, he would have won, because at the very depths of Gotham's cave system, there was one last pool of Dionysium that he could have used to make a cure. But assuring Joker that things weren't over just yet, Batman then pulled off his mask to reveal that he was Dick Grayson the entire time, because Bruce actually was within Gotham's cave system, extracting the Dionysium as they spoke. Nightwing was used as bait for Batman during Joker's death parade, because Bruce discovered there was one last pool of Dionysium in Gotham's cave system to turn into a cure for Joker's new virus. But upon collecting a sample of it, the caves began falling apart and collapsing, because the Joker triggered a bunch of explosives to go off that he planted inside. So Bruce began buckling himself up to a rope along with a pot of Dionysium in hopes that Julia could pull him back up to the surface. But moments later, none other than the Joker himself snuck behind his back, jamming a huge knife directly through his shoulder. So Bruce quickly unstrapped himself from the rope as Julia begged him not to, and tried knocking Joker onto the ground by sweeping through his legs. But the clown was so fast and strong now that he effortlessly dodged all of Bruce's attacks while simultaneously jamming more knives into his shoulders and carving a huge smile into his back. Refusing to let things in like this though, Bruce would then tackle him onto the ground, causing both of them to go tumbling down the side of a ledge while tearing each other apart in the process of doing so. And this was seriously probably the most brutal and blood-filled battle they ever engaged in, because upon making it to the bottom, the Joker grabbed a flaming piece of debris and scorched the side of Bruce's face with it, while Bruce grabbed one of his batarangs and forced it into Joker's chest. But not just any batarang, but one that was laced with an immune response blocker based on Dionysium's chemical structure, which meant that Joker's healing factor wouldn't function properly anymore. Nevertheless, after that, the two of them jumped right back into battle, with Joker hurling a group of cards into Bruce's flesh, and Bruce answering back by tackling him onto the ground and biting off a piece of his ear. But because the Joker was quick to get back on his feet, he then tackled him onto the ground one last time by jamming the ears of his cowl right into the side of his ribcage. Eventually, they were both so weak and exhausted that instead of fighting, they literally just laid there in each other's blood, blood. But afraid that his time was coming to an end, soon enough the Joker tried crawling over to the pool of Dionysium in hopes of being healed. But before he could do so, Batman began choking him out until a massive boulder fell into the pool of Dionysium, guaranteeing that Joker couldn't use it to be healed. After that, Batman ordered Julia to reel in the sample of Dionysium, even though he wasn't strong enough to attach himself to the rope, because making a cure for Gotham was more important than anything right now. And so when it was all said and done, the Bat family, Batman's rogues, and all the people of Gotham would go on to live another day because of the sacrifices of Bruce Wayne. But too weak to carry forward, Bruce himself, along with the Joker, laid inside the crumbling caves until their long, brutal, and blood-filled rivalry was brought to an end. And sadly, that's when Batman Endgame comes to a close, but if you want more stories like this in the future, let me know in the comments down below.